Welcome to another Student Zone session at Microsoft Build. My name's Lee. I'm a cloud advocate here at Microsoft. I live in the UK and I've been working from home for the past year, so the cats have actually moved in, as you can see behind me. I'd like to remind everyone that you'll find the Microsoft Digital Code of Conduct in the chat window, so please read it and be kind to everyone. Now let's talk about the amazing things that have happened in the Student Zone so far this year. You've been joined by previous sessions, you've met astronauts who've not only been to outer space, but also know how to code. You've seen the inside scoop and upcoming movies like Space Jam and New Legacy, and you've had intros to things like C#, Python, AI, bots, GitHub, and Visual Studio Code. Plus, you've heard from lots of Microsoft developers about their journeys and what they do on a day-to-day basis. So if you've missed any of the sessions or want to see them again, it's not too late. We'll be sharing all the sessions on demand so you can watch them at your own leisure. So please carry on watching build sessions and we hope you enjoy the actual journey we're taking you on. But here now, we're going to get started to talk about some great interesting things with our colleague Jen. We're going to give you an introduction to JavaScript and the Olympics. And as we all know, the Olympics are taking place. They've been delayed for a year and they're now going to be in Japan. So I'm personally really excited about the Olympics. So I'd like to welcome Jen. Hi, Jen.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Yeah, I'm so grateful to be here. So thanks, Lee, for the kind introduction. And I'm calling in from Boston, and we are the sun is just rising. So it's morning for me, and I hope you've been all having a great build. I certainly have, and this is our third day of build. So welcome. So in this session, we're going to go for Olympic gold with JavaScript, HTML and CSS. These are the building blocks of the web. So all you web developers, get ready. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So like Lee mentioned, my name is Jen Looper, and you can always find me on Twitter at Jen Looper. I'm a cloud advocate lead on the next generation team. So we all have our little t-shirts on. And we are all about making great experiences for the next generation, for students. We also really interface a lot with faculty and anyone who is interested in learning something new. So welcome to the Student Zone. Everyone knows this is the coolest part of Build. So we're so happy that you're here with us. So welcome. Let's build something. So I'm going to invite you to come along on a journey with me and become a web champion. So we're going to be talking with this Olympics theme because I'm really excited for the Olympics. I hope you are too. And so let's all work together to become a web champion and build something nice for the web to celebrate the Olympics, the 2020-2021 Olympics. So what are you going to need? We're going to work together and we're going to gather the tools you need for the win, right? We're going to get you set up for success, and we're going to use these tools to build a web app for Olympic gold in Tokyo 2021. So last time I was in Tokyo, I just got a notification from my phone saying 2 years ago you were in Tokyo. That was a life-changing event for me. I love Tokyo. I loved the friends I met there. I miss you all. And if you're listening in, I hope to see you again soon. So to become a web champion, you're going to be working as a team. You're going to be working with me. We're going to code together because web development is a team sport. It really is. You're never going to be in a shop all alone in a room, unless you get stuck in the server room, you know. You're never going to work alone to build a web app. You're always going to work with other people, and you're always going to be collaborating. So we're going to collaborate together and build something. Okay. So let's get warmed up, just like, you know, as if we were, you know, getting ready to run a marathon. It'll be a little short marathon today, but I want to make sure that as I'm talking, you're going to do some installations for me, okay, on your local computer, because we're all going to code together, okay? I'd like you to make sure that you have npm installed. npm is the Node Package Manager. So this is the thing that's going to help you download packages that you need to build web apps. You're also going to need Node.js. This is a JavaScript app, so a lot of JavaScript apps are going to be using Node to run locally and to build. So go ahead and get npm installed, and get Node.js installed, and as you're installing things, you know, just listen along and we'll get warmed up. I also would love you to have a GitHub account. So go to github.com, make sure you're signed into your current account, or just open a new account. It's free. You can have private repos, public repos, all for free on your GitHub account. And this is the place where you're going to store your code. And the fourth piece, the fourth tool that you're going to use today is Visual Studio Code. This is another amazing free piece of software that we've developed at Microsoft for you. It's a terrific environment where you can code locally. You can open up a terminal right within Visual Studio Code, and you can run your application. So this is the thing that's going to help you become a terrific developer. So I also want to make sure that you're moisturized and hydrated. So also, just warm up a little bit, stretch your shoulders out, roll your shoulders back, make sure you're sitting nicely in your chair. There's a fun finger exercise you can do, which is, I'm a violinist. We always had to do this to warm up. So, you put your fingers together like this and get your fingers warmed up, get everything ready to code. Okay, you got all your tools, you warmed up, hydrated, moisturized, let's go. Okay, who's ready for the Olympics? I'm so ready for the Olympics. It'll be so cool to watch Summer Olympics on TV. I know that it's a little controversial. People are a little concerned, especially our friends in Japan. I know that probably there aren't going to be any spectators watching in the stands, but the Japanese fans will definitely make an awesome experience for the athletes who have been working so hard to get to the Olympics. So I guess we're supposed to still call it Tokyo 2020. This is their official logo. I like it. It looks like a little flower and little fans. So Tokyo 2020, but it's happening in 2021 because it was delayed by a year because of the pandemic. So who's ready for this Olympic summer? I definitely am. And what I'd like you to do for me is to pop into the chat. What's your favorite Olympic sport? This is my favorite Olympic sport because my kids used to do it, rhythmic gymnastics. It's, again, a little controversial. People are like, why are we twirling ribbons at the Olympics? Well, do you know how much strength it takes to twirl those ribbons? Ribbon, hoop, ball, rope, and floor, but I don't think they do floor in the Olympics. So if there are any rhythmic gymnastics fans out there, I'm really excited to watch who's going to come out on top. But yeah, pop into the chat and tell me what your favorite Olympic sport is. There's some new ones this year. And if you go to Olympics.com, you're going to be leafing through their website and figuring out what's going to be offered, what's on the menu for Tokyo 2020 and 2021. And you come to the sports page, and I'll show you what it looks like. It looks like this. So you come to this page and you're kind of faced with this sort of smorgasbord of little icons. And it says, okay, so these are all the sports that are offered in the Olympics. And then you can pick one and it's gonna load. Here it is. And you get some images and an overview to read. A lot of them have some videos, not this one actually, but there's an outlook, and it'll tell you the event program. So with basketball, there's an eight-team tournament, and this is 3x3 basketball. So there's two types of basketballs. So you can look at the schedule and all of this. This is the Olympic website as it stands currently. So what I propose is that we rethink a little bit how we would display all of this information. Maybe this is not the most engaging way, not to knock anybody's web design, but maybe there are other ways to think about displaying all of these icons and displaying information about all of these sports. Take a look at Olympics.com Tokyo 2020 and take a look at this little smorgasbord and just imagine how would you re-visualize this. What we're going to do in this session is we're going to build an Olympic app to rethink the way this information is presented. What I'd like to propose is that we go ahead and remix this page. So we're going to have 4 goals. We're going to try to increase page stickiness. So if you noticed when I was on the Olympics site, I have to click back and forth and it loads and it loads, and you can scroll, 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 and it's really interesting. But you have to keep going back and forth to get the information you need. So what if we had all the information kind of up front on one page? That would be interesting, right? So if we can remix this by making, all of the sports and all of the critical information about these sports available on one page, what would that look like? Let's think about that. We also need to create some kind of reusable data structures. I looked around and I could not find a great Olympic API. An API is an application programming interface, and it would be sort of like a database that I would have been able to pull from. I couldn't find anything, so we're going to go ahead and create our own. And it's all up on GitHub, and it's complete, so you can take a look at that. So we're going to create these reusable data structures and use those to populate our application. Another requirement we have for our remix is to allow the design to shrink nicely so that it behaves well on your mobile device. So we want to make sure that we include responsive design elements so that the application looks great no matter what size of screen you're going to be building for. That's very important in modern web design. And then I'm going to introduce you to something cool, which is Vite.js. And it is next generation front-end tooling. So this is a little, they call it a meta framework, and we'll go into what that is. But we're going to just introduce this to you, and we're going to use vanilla.js. We're not going to use any other framework except Vite, which isn't even really a framework. So let's go ahead and start. So before you ever start building a web app, you have to start thinking about your architecture a little bit. How do I start building a web app? How do I, what we call greenfield, building a web app? Well, the most basic way to do this is to just have 3 files: index.html for your HTML, script.js for your JavaScript, and styled CSS for your styles. Now, last year, if you were with me, we built a terrarium using this architecture. So we built a little drag and drop meditative interface so that you can take little images of cacti, and we created a jar using just CSS with a little gloss to it, and you can drop your cacti in little drag and drop interface. And we did it with just these 3 files. You can do that, definitely, but it's going to be rare that you're going to actually do this in production. So the pros and cons of just having those 3 files and building away is that the pros are that is a very, very simple way of just learning. If you just want to scaffold up something and get something moving on your local, you can go ahead and try that. It also notifications in Big Sur. Just ignore them. So another thing is you can easily run this kind of application in a local browser. Sorry, while I get rid of those. There we go. You can easily run this application in a local browser, so you can have your HTML running. There's no bundling, no compilation, nothing. So you're just going to go ahead and refresh, and you can see your application as it's being built. And you can deploy this, of course, if you really want to push it to production, you can deploy this kind of very simple architecture as a website on many different platforms. You can create a really quick GitHub Pages site just with these 3 files, and it will totally work, and it will look nice. But the cons of this kind of very simple approach is that it is inappropriate for anything other than the most basic learning. You're never going to really do this in a shop. You're never going to really do this in production. You know, it's great for prototyping, but you're not going to do this, especially working in a team. And another kind of important thing is this architecture doesn't have any kind of bundler. So it can't support any kind of modern JavaScript tooling or techniques like JSX, which the React.js community uses, or I'm a Vue developer, so I use Vue single file components. A Vue single file component is one file with a .vue extension, and it's comprised of a template block, a script block, and styles block usually. So it's all of these 3 pieces in one file, but a browser can't read that. So you have to have some kind of bundler and some kind of tooling running behind the scenes so that it can pick out pieces that are HTML, pick out the script, and pick out the styles and build your website for you. So that's kind of the modern stack. That's the modern way of building for the web. You need some kind of JavaScript tooling behind the scenes that will help translate your code for the web. Another con, not great thing of this very simple architecture is that there's no tooling for things like HMR, and we get really spoiled as JavaScript developers, and we want things to be super, super, super snappy and like go, go, go. But with this kind of very basic architecture, you're not going to have HMR, hot module reload. So when you make a change, you have to refresh your browser to see it. And it sounds like a simple thing, but it'll drive you up the wall. So you want to have better tooling. And then in the modern JavaScript stack, we have modules. So let's go ahead and use them, right? Let's go ahead and use the tooling that are available for the modern JavaScript developer. Great. So we're not going to build HTML, CSS, JavaScript, just 3 files to build a thing. We're not going to do that. What about just jumping right into a framework? How about that? That sounds like fun. I was just saying that I like Vue. I love Vue.js. I used to use Angular a lot. Another great JavaScript framework. You can use React, a very, very popular JavaScript framework, and there are loads and loads more frameworks. There's Svelte. There's all kinds of other frameworks, and people can get a little territorial about what framework they use, which is a little silly. But why would you not want to just jump right into a framework to learn? It's actually, I recommend not jumping right into a JavaScript framework because frameworks are designed to abstract away all the weird little things that JavaScript offers you and all the weird little quirks of that language. Which is great for the more mature developer, but when you're just learning, you want to learn all those weird quirks. You want to learn what's going on with this little language that we use to build the web. So I recommend, get used to HTML, get skilled with HTML, understand CSS. That's the styles. That's the skin of your app. The HTML is the bones of the application. CSS is the skin, and then your JavaScript are the muscles of your app. So you need to understand all that, all the taxonomy, all the body parts to build nicely for the web. So start with vanilla JavaScript, and then later you'll be able to jump into a framework. So like I was talking about, there are some good things and bad things about using frameworks. I'll just go over this again. So the pros would be if you use a framework, it's great for teamwork. Everyone can be working in like a Vue shop or an Angular shop, and then everyone sort of knows where to look for the code base. Where's the front end, where are the scripts, where's the styles, and everything is sort of sorted out and your code is organized. Frameworks are great for sites that need to scale. So when you work in a shop, you're going to need to scale and you're going to need to add modules and modules and modules. And frameworks have gotten great about scaffolding quickly. Vue has all of these frameworks have a terrific CLI, the command line interface. So you can just be typing in the command line and you can be scaffolding an app just really, really quickly. They all come with terrific tooling. Frameworks are all about tooling. The cons of using a framework is that some frameworks are way too complex for their own good. They've become a little clunky. They can add weight to your application, and JavaScript is getting very heavy on the web. So we need to be a little careful of how much code we're shipping and the weight of our application, because remember, we need to support people who need to work offline. We need to support people who are just accessing your website on a mobile device, maybe a low-level Android with spotty internet connection. So we need to watch it if you're loading up your simple website with a big framework. Like I said, frameworks are a lousy way to learn the basics of JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. Maybe that's too strong of a statement, but I strongly recommend learning the basics and then jumping into your framework. And then maintenance over time, it can just be tough, right? Maintenance of these frameworks, they're constantly evolving, and you're going to need to be upgrading and watching for version change. So those are some of the pros and cons. So I've talked about building a website with super basic architecture, HTML, JavaScript, CSS, just 3 little files. That would be nice. I've talked about heavy-handed frameworks, which are opinionated, and they have their ideas on where everything should be stored. Is there some middle ground? Can't we have both? Can't we have both? Is there some way that we can walk a middle ground and find some tooling that helps us, but still allow us to learn some basics of JavaScript, HTML, and CSS as we go? Well, my friends, yes, there is. So I'd love to introduce to you Vite, which is free and open source from the folks that are creating Vue. Is coming Vite. Vite is a French word that means fast. It is not Vite, it's Vite. What is Vite? Vite is a free and open source JavaScript meta framework. It's actually a new meta framework, and it supports other frameworks like React, Vue, and also vanilla JavaScript. I believe it supports Svelte as well. I'm not sure about Angular. I have to double check on that one. Let me just pop over to the website to show you where it is on the web. It's here, and you can go ahead and take a look at vitejs.dev. Very simple website. This looks very much like a VuePress website, and it will show you a little bit of information on how to get started. So it's a meta framework that supports other frameworks. And what it does is it solves a couple of problems. So one thing about JavaScript applications is that they're getting big and heavy and slow to build. And Vite actually provides an interesting and novel way of handling that bundling I was talking about. When you need to take your Vue app and you need to bundle it up and create a web app out of it, it handles JavaScript modules a little bit differently, and it spins up servers crazy fast. So when I first tried Vite, I started my application and it built so quickly that I thought I'd made a mistake, and I double checked because it's just wild. I'll show you in a minute how fast it builds and how fast it scaffolds up a development environment for you. And it helps you speed up development because it's doing selective bundling with HMR, remember hot module reload, and it's running as you work. So it really, really is fast to build. It's a wonderful development experience. I need to be on commission, except that it's free. So you can always go ahead and try these things. Why not? Okay, enough blabber from me. Are you ready to build? Let's build something together. Okay, so what I want you to do is go to aka.ms/Olympic-app. And what I want you to do, I'll show you where it is on GitHub. It's right here. So this is on my repo. And you can see that it's an application, and this is what we're going to build. We're going to build some flippy cards. Here are the resources that you need and some information about all of this. I actually also have the project that we included last year. Go ahead and log into GitHub and look at the right part of the screen, and you're going to see this little button that says fork. Fork is just another way of copying code. So you're going to fork this code base. I want to watch this happening. So I want to see who's forking. Yes, see, 4 people. This is great. So fork away and grab all this code base. And then what I want you to do is take a look at the branches. There's 2 branches. So there's a main branch and there's a student branch. So when you have this forked locally, it will open up in Visual Studio Code. Let me show you what it's going to look like. This is my Visual Studio Code. Remember, I was asking you to go ahead and download this. This is the application that I've built for you. I'm on the main branch, which is the completed code, but I want you to go ahead and switch to the student branch. You're going to check out Origin Student. That's the remote branch. So I want you to grab that branch, and it has some code that we're going to complete together. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. And what I always do when starting an application is I go to the package.json file and just take a look at what's going on here. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code and look at package.json. So package.json is the heart and soul of your application, and it basically is saying this is an Olympic flippy card application, and it's a Vite application. So there are a couple scripts that we're going to use. We're going to type npm run dev, and that will just show your application in a hot module in a HMR fashion, so you can start developing. You can also build it and you can serve it. You can preview it. And there's a developer dependency, which is Vite. So when you get this, make sure to run npm I, and that will bring in the packages that you need. Npm install. Switch to the student branch and npm install. Okay. So let's take a look at other things that are going on in this code base. The first edit I want you to do is I want you to follow the medals. So look for the gold medals in the code on the student branch, and I want you to go ahead and take a look at index.html. So let's get an idea of what's going on here. We are going to create a place for our card grid to live. So if you find index.html, you can see that there's a gold medal right here. And you can see div with an ID of app. Now inside that div, I want you to add a couple extra bits here. So we're going to add your h1 and if it's not there, but right here, you're going to add this div class of grid and ID of grid and close your div. So this is where your the bundler is going to start injecting all of the JavaScript and HTML and all of that interactivity that's going to create your flippy card app. So I'm going to let you go ahead and just type that in. So add an H1, welcome to the 2021 Olympics in Tokyo, and add that div class of grid with an ID of grid, close your div tag. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to show you what we're going to build. And you can watch this. This is pretty cool. So in Visual Studio Code, you can see that the terminal, you can open up a terminal, and all I do is npm run dev. Now watch this. I'm going to hit enter. Boom. It's ready. 253 milliseconds to get this thing scaffolded on localhost. And this is what you're going to build. So this is a Vite app, and these are the cards that we're going to build. And aren't they pretty? So they're very nice. So I just want to pause here while you're getting all your tooling ready to go. I launched this app and I ran it, and I ran an accessibility test on it, and it actually came out very nicely on accessibility. So, but when you're starting to create these fancy interfaces, use just test it for accessibility and make sure that this is going to work on all your devices and for all of your audiences. So here you can see the responsive nature of this, and it's going to go down, 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 and it goes up, 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 up. Because this is working as a CSS grid. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So, but I just want to have this little caveat that as you're working, just be aware that you need to be testing and making sure that your application is accessible. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you've got your div ready to go. Now, step 2, follow the metals. We're going to go to main.js, the main.js file, and we're going to do a couple things. We're going to create this div as a reference. We're going to let this div be a div, and we're going to grab its ID. Remember, we called it ID equals grid, and we're going to just make a reference to that, and we're going to start allowing the application to inject code into there. So, and the other thing we're going to do is you're going to need to import your data. So I finished all the data for you. You're just going to import data from Olympic Sports JSON. So JSON is JavaScript object notation. It is a way of structuring your data so that JavaScript can read it and can use it. So import your JSON and create a reference to this div. I'll show you what it looks like. In my Visual Studio Code, here it is, main.js. So here is the import at the gold medal, import your data, and then let div equals document get element ID by ID grid. So grab that reference, and then we're going to start injecting some data into it to make our cards. Okay. So while you're typing, you'll also take a look at what's going on in main.js. Very interesting. So I'm using a piece of DOM manipulation. So DOM is the document object model, and this is how the bones of your application are scaffolded in HTML. And I'm using insert adjacent HTML, which is a little kind of lesser well-known call, and it is. What it's doing is it's a method of the element interfaces, and it parses the specified text as HTML and inserts the resulting nodes into the DOM tree. So it's going to look through my JSON file of Olympic sports, scaffold out some HTML dynamically, and inject it into that div that you just created. That's what's going on right here. And it's just a little for loop. And it's a for loop saying, look through the data and start building out the cards. There, I think, are 40 cards, and it's going to loop through this, and it's going to create dynamic HTML. And these are all the flippy cards. So we have flip card, and then we have the inner flip card, and we have the front of the flip card with an image, an H2, an H3, and an H4. Favored for gold is the H4. Those are all HTML tags. And then we also have the back of the card, which is just the description, which is in an H3. So all of this HTML is being looped, and it's being injected into that div. It's a sneaky way of creating an interface in JavaScript. So, if you had the opportunity to build something in HTML like this, it would be a little bit more verbose. You'd have to, you couldn't make it as dynamic. But here we're doing it in JavaScript, so we're just looping through and injecting this dynamic HTML using insert adjacent HTML. Okay, it's halftime. So as you're looking through your files and typing, I'd love for you to take a look at olympicdata.json. So here we have the JSON data structure. JSON is JavaScript object notation. And normally you could maybe call an API, call an external database and grab data externally and import it into your application. Like I said, I couldn't find a great Olympics API, so we built our own, right? We're just using a local file, but this could be stored in a database as well. So here is what the information looks like to build your Olympic app. And here's an example. This is the sport is equestrian. We have our equestrian image that I scraped off of the Olympics site. There are 3 events in equestrian, which is dressage, eventing, and jumping. And then here's a little description. Favored for gold is Germany, apparently. So watch for the beautiful horses and how they are dancing around and jumping and chasing themselves through the countryside. So this is what your data looks like, and it's all done in a loop. You can take a look in your JSON data, which is in public. Well, your images are in public, and your JSON file is in, there we go. Sorry, I've lost it. Oh, there it is. Olympic sports JSON is totally blanked out. This is what it looks like. So this is all of your data. Okay. Okay, now let's think about that HTML structure that we injected. So we've created all of this dynamic HTML and we're injecting it into that div. And this is what it ends up looking like. So let's think about how this works with what we call the box model with CSS. So we're creating an HTML structure and we're going to style it with CSS. All of our interactivity is going to be created in CSS. That's a great way to do little animations. But first you have to have the cards laid out. So we have our grid, which we created, and then inside that we have flip card. Inside that we have flip card inner, and this manages how the cards are working back and forth. So side by side, we have the flip card front and the flip card back. We're going to use CSS to make these basically sit on top of each other and flip back and forth. I can't really do it with my hands there. Do it like that. So it's going to flip back and forth, and you're going to use CSS to go ahead and make that interactivity. But this is what you would do if you would inspect your website. This is the HTML that you would see, and this is what's being injected. Okay, let's keep going because now we have to write some CSS. So this is the most amount of writing you're going to do. So I will leave this up on the screen. If you don't get it done, that's fine. All of the completed code is on the main branch and you can always just grab it. So what we're going to do is take a look at the CSS. I'll show you where it is. Here, style CSS. And what you're going to do is you're going to look for the metals. So here's the gold medal, the silver medal, and the bronze medal. So you're going to build out your gold medal grid here by adding some information here, grid and flip card. So what does that look like? What's going on here? What we're going to do is we're going to use that grid, the div with the ID of grid, and turn it into a CSS grid. A CSS grid is a really powerful way of creating card layouts or grid layouts. And I use them for cards. It is part of the spec for CSS. You can read more about it on MDN, which is Mozilla Web Docs. And this will go through. There are also some terrific educational tutorials online about CSS Grid. If you wanted to use Flexbox, that would be fine. I've been using CSS Grid a little bit more recently, because I think it's a really powerful way to go ahead and create a grid layout. So here we have our grid, and you're going to just set the display of that grid to be a grid. So that's pretty straightforward, and that will create your grid for you. Then you can start adding some details about the grid. The grid has some template columns. They need to repeat. They need to be auto-fit. The minimum size is going to be 320 pixels. Now, if you have to support very small screens, teeny little Androids, you can go smaller than that. Experiment and see what works for you. And then we have a grid gap, a little gap between each piece of the grid. Let's see what else is going on here. So we're going to fit the content to resize automatically. Oh, yes, and the 1FR is 1 fraction of the container's free space is made, is part of this grid. You're going to justify your items to be centered, align them to the center, and then you're going to style your flip card class here. So the width is 100% and the height is 50% variable height. So as you scroll down, you'll see that there are 50% of the variable height. Add the perspective to be 1,000 pixels. So this is something that will help you with when you need to flip them. The perspective needs to be a little bit bigger. So, so you're going to set the flip card container to be 100% with a variable height of 50% of the viewport height. So that's that 50 VH. So there's a lot of pixels and free space going on here, rem, Vite. There's a lot going on here. We don't have time to cover all of the pieces today, but these are the things that make the grid respond nicely screen by screen. Take a look at the next piece that you need to style, which is your flip card inner class. So this is the piece that contains all of your cards. This is where you're going to start adding some animation, right? So this is going to be, it's going to need to transform pretty quickly as you mouse over it. So we're going to add, we're going to make the width and the height 100%, align the text to the center, and create a transition. So this is a pretty quick transition. It's going to transform as you mouse over. It's going to quickly flip. And as you transform it, you're going to preserve the 3D nature of the animation. So it's going to look like a card flipping and flip back. It's not going to like just flip without that extra animation, the 3D transform. You can, play with this and tinker with it a little bit and see if it makes sense to you. So you're going to complete the flip card inner styling, and then you're going to take a look at this hover styling. So here we have a hover, and when you mouse over, that means hover. Hover means mouse over. You're going to be able to transform. You're going to transform it by rotating 180 degrees. So this is where the rotation starts. So we put the transition up here on flip card inner. We transform it quickly. Put the transform style up here, and then here on the hover, which is where you're actually hovering with your mouse, you're going to rotate it. The last piece in the bronze medal area, you're going to go ahead and style the actual card, so the front and the back of the card. And this is just, to make it look nice, but most importantly, it's an absolute positioning. So this will position them with their pixel width on top of each other. So that's an important piece. If you don't have that in there, you're going to see that your interface will be having front and back cards side by side. So it'll be a question of you won't be able to flip them. Back face visibility is hidden so that when you have your front facing, you can't see the back. If you can play with that, take that out a little bit and see what it's kind of a weird effect. There's a lot of interesting little CSS tricks in here. And then you can play with those to make, style it the way you like. But this flip card back piece has a transform as well, so that when you are not hovering on the back of the card, so you hover on the front of the card, it flips to the back. You take your mouse away and it transforms back. So that is what's going on with all of this CSS. I'll show you what it looks like. And I know this is a lot, but you can always look at the main branch if you want to just copy paste. So here's style. And here is the grid, flip card inner, flip card hover, flip card front, back, and flip card back to get that rotation. So that's the entire flipping of the card effect that you're going to be working on. So there you go. And by this time, you should be able to take a look at your Flippy Card app. I think mine was on localhost. Let's see if it's still there. Not 8080, it was 30,000. Yeah. So here we go. And you can see this nice flip and the nice flip and the nice flip. And you can see how they're all styled nicely. And it's pretty fast and pretty lightweight and responsive. So that's your Olympic Card app. And I hope you enjoyed building with me, but there's one more thing we have to do, and that is to take it live. So what I'd like you to do is to take a look at static web apps. This is the kind of application that will perform beautifully as a static web app because it's just like a few files. It's using Vite. Static web apps supports Vue, React, Angular, Vite, vanilla, JavaScript, all of these kind of static app content that you need to create on the web. So static web apps are a terrific way to scaffold. And what you're going to do, the easiest way to do this, is to go into Visual Studio Code and go into your Azure extension, and that's going to load up any static web apps. Now you're going to have a little bit of setup prior to this, but I'm just going to show you once you have signed into Azure and you have everything set up, you're going to go ahead and create a new, on this subscription, you're going to need a subscription, but you can get them for free for small things. So we're going to create a Flippy Card application. Here's Flippy Cards. This gives you a little bit of choice on what kind of application. I'm just going to say it's a view application, although it's not really. This is the location of the application code is at the root, and then it's going to build to dist, to the dist folder. So when I do npm run build, it all builds to dist. So then it's going to kick off. Oh, looks like I need to reload my window. I'm not going to do that. But anyway, it'll kick off and it will go ahead and build your application for you. So I wonder why it's doing that. Well, I will, what the heck, roll the dice. Anyway, so it's going to start building and building and building, and then it will create a GitHub Actions file, and that is going to control your building process. So your application will eventually live alive on the web, and you can show your friends the awesome application that you created. So what I would love for you to do is complete the code base and then tear it apart again. I want you to tear apart the code base, maybe create a non-Olympic app, maybe create flippy cards all about your favorite Pokemon, or create an application all about your family, or your favorite restaurants, or your favorite dishes, or whatever you like. So now you have the interface, you have flippy cards. If you got a little bit lost or stuck, go back to the main branch and see all of the CSS and bits and pieces that are needed for your animation. And reach out to me on Twitter at Jen Looper and see if you can, show me your applications. I'm excited to see what you build. So that's it for me, and thank you so much. It's our finish line, so build something new. And Lee, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Jen. That was really awesome. We really loved how you took an application and built something in your own area of interest, so the Olympics, which isn't really a tech area. If you think of the Olympics, there's no tech sports. So we had lots of interest from all the viewers around the world. We had people even from Japan, saying hi from Japan. So hi to the people in Japan. Also, we had some people actually commenting on, when you couldn't find the JSON file, where was the location? The file is here. So again, thanks for taking part and filling those in. So we have a few questions from the attendees. What really interested me was we had lots of interest around accessibility. So people are asking, how can I make my site accessible? What are the real good tools available as a web developer to make your site accessible?
Yeah, accessibility is very, very important. There's many aspects to accessibility, and it just starts even with simple things. See, I just did it. That's a word that's not particularly accessible, the word simple. Nothing is simple when you're first getting started. So there's tooling in Visual Studio Code that you can use to check even the language that you use when writing. But accessibility is all about making your application accessible to everyone on the web. Like they say, a web application that is accessible to some is accessible to none. So this is something that you really need to pay attention to. You can have a checklist for yourself, and you need to have things like alt tags and on your images, which you saw that I had. But you can also run your application through a tool called Lighthouse, just to see how you're doing. So I wonder if my application is built, because I can do a Lighthouse report on my application. Did it build? So I think probably not yet. I don't have the URL for it, but you can go ahead and dig into, for example, the Tokyo website. You go into more tools, developer tools, and there's something called Lighthouse. So Lighthouse will allow you to generate a report on your application. It needs to be a production application. It needs to be deployed on a website. So if I would generate this report, it would go through and it would sort of look through, it would audit, it would see what's going on, make sure all of the images load, watch for the speed. So there's a lot going on with an accessibility review. Make sure your application, you can check that it works offline. You can check that all of your images have alt tags so that a screen reader can understand what's going on. It's a very interesting thing to take a look, to work with someone who has the screen reader and can actually run your application through what their experience is with it. There's a lot of great tooling, but it's really an interesting thing to just talk to people and get an idea of how they're using your website.
Thanks, Jen. So again, what resources are available for the audience to take away and learn and re-watch this later and have access to those resources? So do you have a set of resources we can share?
Yeah, so Not specifically on accessibility, I have these.
Great. So again, as an audience, you can actually look at all these links. So we have a great course on web dev for beginners, a great course on web dev learn modules where you can actually use Microsoft Learn to learn web development, and of course the GitHub repo that Jen has shown us today.
Yeah.
So, as a final thank you to everyone, don't forget to fill out the survey for the session. The link is at the bottom of the session page. On the second page, go to the Cloud Skills Challenge and get involved in the Cloud Skill Challenge. And most of all, we hope you really enjoy the rest of Build and really take part in this. And our next session will be coming up in 15 minutes on how to use Microsoft Graph and build graph-based applications using JavaScript.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us.